Hello everybody, David Violet here with note-taking for consecutive interpreting, but I'm thinking sometimes I should give this whole course and these videos and my practice a completely different name because it's not just note-taking. What we end up doing is learning how to be interpreters in every aspect. And when I think back about it, in my year of consecutive interpreting at AZ in Paris, well, that's basically what we were doing. We were learning how to do consecutive with notes, but the whole time, the seasoned interpreters who were our professors were talking about every kind of situation that we might run into. And just as we do in these practices, and just as we did about an hour ago, and I'm going to show you that, we listened to a speech and we discussed all the little hurdles, all the little challenges, all the strategies, and what you should and should not do when this happens or that happens. So, for example, the speaker actually sang for a moment, and we discussed what to do about that. Anyway, I'm going to show you now some of that practice session so you will get a feel for what we're doing. And I would like to emphasize we've had three at least, success stories recently. One person passed the exam for consecutive from Portuguese to English at the European Union. Another passed his exams for conference, including consecutive with notes for the U.S. State Department, and another one got a permanent position in a ministry of her country. And these are all in the last couple of months, and we get stories like this all the time. I'm not saying they succeeded solely because of this practice. I'm rather saying the kind of people who come to this practice are the kind of people who are doing a lot of work in addition to their actual paid work in order to get better. And I highly recommend you do that, and I highly recommend you join us. So let's take a look at, if you're interested, you will see some of the discussions that we have when we're doing our practices on Fridays, Saturdays, and usually also on Sundays. Saturday and Sunday is at noon, New York time, and Friday is at 9 p.m. New York time. So let's take a look. Raham, that was really a nice way to give a critique. I couldn't find any fault with it. It was really, I think you zeroed in on one aspect, which was the liveliness. There may have been some points of substance here and there, but you zeroed in on the delivery. And I was very advanced, and so I thought that was appropriate. Although I think if you had time, you could probably dig into a couple more things and why the notes were not there. But that's good because it's saving us time just to do it that way and zero in on the main part. Well, it's really very good. You're a professional, and I know you're going to have a great career. You don't.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks,
no,
guys.
really. You've understood it. You do it. You're able to perform it, and it's right on track. The only little things I agree with Raham. And it's interesting you're saying you're trying to experiment with going a bit slower, or don't confuse fast, slow, and lively and smooth. I think we can be lively and smooth and fast, but not appear all that fast. But I'm just saying that as a goal for us all to set. And you're close, but you could have said it's as she said. Like he said, I literally ran out of the restaurant, and so you have this image, right? The owner who was Okay, and another tiny little detail you missed was, well, I was out in the dining room helping the servers a little bit, and I happened to overhear a conversation. You see how I said it like I'm telling a story? And anyway, so there's a little bit of a filling, a liveliness that you could have added. And so I literally ran out of the restaurant and went to the local hot dog stand. I can't remember his exact words, but if you can sort of add that drama and liveliness to it, that's sort of the last thing for you to add to your interpretation, because otherwise it's not easy to get all these little things, and we can look at a couple of matters of substance if you like, as a matter of helping you with your notes. But that's my take. Yeah, Raham, you have something to add?
So which way would you go?
So that's a question for everybody. Does anybody?
Yeah.
Anybody have a take on that?
Well, I think that in the first case, you couldn't. You're not a poet, so you couldn't give an equivalent of of a verse. But that's why you couldn't use the same language, and you gave an idea. But in this case, if you can reproduce, come up with equivalents in, like in your rendition, then why not?
I agree with you on that, Elizabeth, and it's very nicely and succinctly said. Jessie.
Yes, I actually agree with Elizabeth. My language combination is Chinese and English, and in China we have many poetries and verses that speakers usually say that. Most of the time they're really common ones that we can actually pop it out immediately, but occasionally they dig into something really hard, and in that case we can only interpret the meaning. We really can't tell exactly which verse they took it out from, what kind of poetry. So that was really, really hard for Chinese interpreters in that sense. And as for lively rendition, I personally prefer the lively rendition when I'm going into another language, or even just to repeat what was said, because personally I think language is not just about reading, not just about pronunciation, is also about intonation and the stresses and the rendition and everything that goes with it. And when you do a lively rendition, just like the speakers did, and it's actually saving your time, and your message will get across better.
I really agree with you, Jessie. That's great. Chris.
This was challenging here.
This is the challenge. This is the challenge.
This is the challenge, to get the detail and to deliver it in a way that it's humorous. And obviously you're not there to replace Mr. Speaker, but you can't just be like, I don't know, blasé. You can't just be like, here. You have to, there's got to be some ups and downs.
I agree completely, Chris. Very well said. Sophie.
I think this what you ask, Reham, is very interesting, but it's what you said, and all the answers are correct. And we have to remember that it applies also in a situation where the talk is not that positive or that polite or that funny. What I mean here is that, for example, as an interpreter, we are supposed to remain neutral. I agree with you. I think you just alluded to that position. We are neutral, but how? We are neutral in the way we speak. We don't interfere with the speaker's position or ideas, but we remain neutral because we don't transform what he's saying. But we are not neutral when it's about emotions, be they positive or negative. And we are supposed, in that case, to transmit them, not to tone them down. Because if you tone any emotion down, you are taking a position and you are transforming the original. For example, at school, we were tested the very first day with a very vulgar speech. it was full of dirty words like pee, caca, blah, 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 scatology. And I was like, oh my God, what is the teacher willing to do? So I just went on with the pee, caca, and all the scatology thing. And he got very happy because, I mean, some of the students were like, oh, am I going to say pee, caca? They didn't say it, you know? So you're not supposed to transform the original. And more recently, I mean, more seriously at work, I had to, we happened to be interpreting dramatic situations with people having their sons killed and tortured and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, of course we were about to cry because, I mean, you receive all the suffering from the woman, from the mother. And I mean, I wasn't supposed to tone it down. So I just transmitted it through the mic. And then the ambassador got up and in the middle of everyone, and he got up and he hugged that woman. And he said that he was sharing her her pain. So, you know, I was not supposed to transform her story, although it was very hard to, I mean, to stand firm. But if she was crying, of course I didn't cry, but I mean, my voice wasn't happy at all. So, I mean, I didn't tone down her speech, but I respected it too. And I think you were on that line with your question.
Sophie, very, very, very well said. I agree 100% with you. So we've just had 4 people, professional interpreters, come out and give their view, and that's why I call this a seminar also, because it's just such a wealth of knowledge here. Daniel, you are...
Yeah, very, very well said. Yeah, I wanted to add that we could all also, and I don't mean that we're doing this, but we can get lost in the stories. I think he threw content in there, the main theme of what you shared with us earlier, David. He mentioned unreasonable hospitality as a main topic, and then he used words like ordinary transaction, turning them into extraordinary experiences. And I think that kind of got lost in he threw that in there in the middle of his story and being funny and comical, and you know, so that was just my 2 cents.
Okay, you are actually zeroing in on the matter that we have just discussed in the context of Awa's rendition. Awa, I've already told you that it was a great job, so don't feel bad. But
No, I'm not at all.
It's true.
I fully agree with this.
Yeah. But what I'm going to say is, it is true, and I think this is what people are sort of saying, is that you concentrated on the meaning, but the delivery was a little bit flat. And
Correct. Yeah.
right? And listen, I don't know that I could, or anybody here could have gotten all the substance you got, so don't take this as, some kind of a...
No, I
Right.
fully agree. I mean,
Okay.
it's
But-
my opinion to that.
So, for example, and Dan is right, it was in the title, and when you hear something in a speech, you can use what you heard 3 or 4 minutes later and apply it in the very first minute. And this is a case like that, because this term unreasonable is clearly sort of a leitmotif in his speech. And he calls it unreasonable hospitality. And you said incredible. So what you probably had it underlined, and that's fine, because that means I've got to emphasize it somehow, or I'm not sure what you had in your notes. So you found a synonym, and that's the next best thing. It's great, and if you were going into another language, you would have to find another word anyway, right? So that's what you have to do. So I'm not going to criticize you for not coming back with unreasonable, except that since it does happen more than once, I'm just trying to emphasize this principle. If you keep hearing it, you should say, that's right, that's the adjective he's using. And then you'll find the one that in the target language that works best. But you also, as Dan said, he said...
No, oh my God, I was about to ask, how would we translate? But we're not translating here.
Yeah, we're not translating here.
Yeah.
you did what we do. You found a synonym and it was okay. I'm just emphasizing that we can use this term. What we learn later in the speech, we can use it early in the speech. It was the same with, as Dan said, extraordinary. You said amazing. So I'm sort of curious, do you underline, and is that how you're emphasizing? Because let me just tell you, the method is good. And when you go into another language, that's what you're going to have to do, right? You're going to have to find a good synonym that's pretty much along the same lines, or as close as possible. And that's what you did. But I'm just curious, did you underline?
In most areas, I didn't even underline it. I remembered that he was emphasizing, but I was taking the details, so I was running late, and so in one part I wrote amazing, like, or my symbol for that, and in other parts where he had the list of superlatives everywhere, I just didn't put it. I remembered that he was talking.
Okay.
But so it's a good idea maybe that I write the adjective he used there too.
Well, I'm just drawing attention, because it's only by getting criticism and then examining what happened that we do better next time. Actually, you did very well, to be honest. But anyway, everybody seems to be zeroing in on this thing that you don't, for Sophie, you don't tone it down. I totally agree. The way it was put to me in school was, if I am in an argument with someone during negotiations, and I tell them, look, you stop being an ass about it. I'm getting tired of this. And he comes back and says, thank you. I'm very happy with your reply as well. I'm going, is he making fun of me, or is the interpreter just blocking what I'm saying? So people want you to give the full force of what is being said. I generally say, okay, we might err on the 90% of what's being said, because we don't want to, by mistake, hit 110%, because you might, through your own error, make things worse. So anyway, yesterday there was something where the guy said, it's a lot better when you get your head out of your ass. And in the little breakout room that I was in, I could tell that the interpreter was bothered. How am I going to, for some people in their culture or in their personality or in their world, they just have a really hard time saying that, a word like that, and being as vulgar as the original. I think you still have to do it if you want to be a good interpreter. You can kind of show, if you really want to, and if it's a consecutive situation where they can see you, you can kind of show that it's not you saying that, it's someone else, so don't blame me. You can show that with your look. That's one remedy, is to say, but to say it, you need to give the full force, and I think that's what Sophie was saying. And if it's heartbreaking or insulting, you have to give the full force of what's going on. You can't filter anything. Okay, I guess I've talked enough. Jesse, what do you have to say?
Yes, I think you're right. We cannot filter. So yesterday when we were doing that piece, I actually did say the words that he was using. However, when going into another language, it's kind of hard to gauge exactly what level of vulgarness that
So
we
true.
have to go to.
So
Yes.
true.
So that's my problem.
Good point. And in the other language, you wouldn't want to use the very same term, right? You don't have to use the anus and head and all that. What you're aiming at is the same impact, the same feeling, the same vulgarity. So you're not a slave to the actual words. And although if it risks being repeated and coming up over and over, you're going to be in a delicate situation if you change it all, right? So if the person, sorry to be vulgar in this situation, but we need to, if he said you have your head up your ass and you say something like, in another language, you judge that it's the same level of vulgarity to say, and you have your hand down your throat, and then I'm just picking, an arbitrary example. You might do that, right? You might decide, okay, this is pretty much synonymous. This is what we would say in the same situation. It has the same meaning, but it's not the same body parts. But if it's repeated over and over again, you're going to find yourself having to jump around it all the time, or perhaps even explaining, okay, in the original it was these two body parts, but I used these two body parts. That might actually happen, that you explain that. And that goes back to the part about poetry that we heard earlier. If someone reads a poem and there's no way you can render that, right? The poem is, the form is mixed together with a substance, and so you might do, as I think Raham said, you would say, okay, at this point there was a poem, literally it was this, but in the original it's well known and it's very poetic. You know, you might give a small piece of information like that to help out your clients. Okay, we've had an interesting seminar, and I hope we're not taking up too much time away from our practices. Shall we go on? See the rest of this? Okay.
Then I think I have a question, actually. This to everybody. When the part where he sang that song, as an interpreter, what are we supposed to sing? Because you just said the speaker, yes?
Personally,
I just want to know what everybody thinks about that. You wouldn't know.
No,
I wouldn't
because
either.
then you'd have to sing and then you'd have to do it in a different language, and
Yeah.
to me
Okay.
that's no.
Okay. I just wanted to know. I was curious. Thank you. That's all.
That's an excellent question, and I thought I might address it when we get back to the main room. Yeah, we're back to the larger group. A couple of little things came up. What do you do about when he sang? And in the room I was in, the interpreter said, and he sang something, and then the interpreter said, "Thank you," and that was good, except that he was saying thank you because they applauded his singing. So the thank you sort of was in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it was not clear, right? So I would have said maybe at this point the speaker sang, people clapped, and he said thank you, and then continue. Something like that, just so that they know what's going on. I'm sure that would happen naturally anyway if you were there. But obviously, you're not going to sing. You can't sing. But I think the best is to say that he sang, and people probably saw.
Why can you not sing?
Good question. I was
Who
going to
says I
raise
can't
my
sing?
hand.
Who says I can't sing?
Hey, Chris, this is what I was telling to Lucas. I mean, you are not supposed to sing a cappella in a mic where people will get a very poor version of a good singer. So don't
He's
make
not
yourself
a good
ridiculous.
singer.
He's just
No.
sang in
Yeah,
the
but
same
he's a
mic he was
speaker, so he
speaking in.
He has
did
the
not have a
authority.
singing microphone either, mind you. He did not have a singing microphone either. He was pretty confident in doing that.
Okay.
And I
Okay,
think
let me say, the danger of singing is that you may appear, it's just like when you do too many gestures and get too theatrical, people they might laugh. You don't want people to laugh at the interpreter because of that kind of thing. And okay, maybe it isn't so obvious. You could, if you do it right, you could actually sing that part. But I do think it would be a moment where the interpreter is drawing attention to him or herself and sort of stealing the stage. That's the danger. You are sure you're doing a faithful interpretation, but the danger is sort of becoming a distraction, okay? I do think that an interpreter who would actually sing, repeating what the original sang, is in danger of becoming a bit the subject of conversation, and you don't want that. That's interrupting the flow of what they're doing. But it's a judgment call. I'm not going to say you can't do it. Yeah, go ahead, Sylvia.
I have a question. What do you do? Let's say you choose, and yes, great point about the fact that you might draw attention. I didn't think about that one, about the fact that you might draw the attention on you, the interpreter, and that's not exactly what you want. But what do you do with the part where he says later on, because a few seconds later he says, and now you're stuck with it in your head?
I would just say that.
The effect of this, I think, is exactly this. This is why he's doing it. He wants to get a joke out of it, and the complete joke ends at the point where he says, "And now you're stuck with it for the rest of the day."
Interesting.
So what do you do with? Yeah.
I would just say exactly what he said. But if while saying it I realize that it's not clear what's going on, or before saying it I might say, I've sung it for you now, so it'll be stuck in your head. Or something that will make it clear and will be completely faithful to the message. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does answer my question. Yes, thank you.
You do have to somehow make the whole thing fit. And this is something actually I wanted to, because the question of order came up also in the room I was in. So if someone changed the order of what was said. In my opinion, you can change the order because to some extent, this is your speech. And that's the way it was put to me by Christopher Thierry, anyway. He said, c'est votre discours. And so you cannot ever use the excuse, which is, okay, this sounds ridiculous, but I'm just interpreting. Or this sounds confusing, but I'm just interpreting what he said. Well, okay, you could sometimes do that, but I caution you, really, your speech, you should deliver something that is coherent, clear, and a standalone speech. So the reason I'm saying that is, let's say the person has 3 points, but the person did not say, I have 3 points for you. In my opinion, the interpreter is free to say, I have 3 points, because the interpreter knows that will improve the reception, the way the speech comes across. I'm just saying it's not unfaithful to say that. It's not unfaithful. Just because he didn't say, I have 3 points, he does have 3 points. I'm saying that you can modify things as long as you're absolutely faithful to the content, in order, if that little modification of form makes it a better, more clear and more coherent and more a speech that will stand on its own. Sound like you're not interpreting. That's a little bit maybe controversial for some of you, but that's the way I was taught. We've got so little time. Shall we stop the debate and move on and do one more piece? Yeah, okay, here we go.
I was going to say something about the singing part, but I didn't get the chance to.
Yeah, go ahead.
The sentence. The thing was, I did it, but I only did it because I know I have a voice, I know I have experience in singing, and I knew I could do it. In real life, however, that's a different story, because I might have, even though I know for sure, I could have done it right. I would have done what you just said. That is, captured and got all the attention on me, which is something I don't want as an interpreter. So I think in real life, I might have chosen not to sing.
It's an interesting question, and I do think I've seen interpreters suddenly catch everyone's attention because they do something like that, and people think it's marvelous, and the interpreter, of course, is very happy because everybody thinks it's marvelous, but they shouldn't be very happy because they're interrupting the meeting.
And also the people in the room, they have heard the song already, so I mean, they're not stupid.
Good point, exactly.
Yeah.
What about the language?
Yes. Music is for all.
Well, there are so many great discussions we could have. We were talking about the music again in the room I was in, but we've run out of time. So I will see all of you who can make it tomorrow, same time, okay?
We lost a few people.
They said
Lucas.
goodbye. They said goodbye.
Just two along the way.
Some people, occasionally they can't do the whole thing. So, okay. I hope you liked it. It was really a great session. I thought great discussion. Thank for all your contributions. They were excellent, professional contributions. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow or next week.
Congratulations. Bye bye.
Bye bye.